All right, so DB King. We'll talk about some strategies for this game. This is actually one of the free games in SoundGym, so that tells me that they think it's pretty fundamental. I do too. So I've got it kind of loaded up here on the screen, and I think that a couple of things that, before we even play the game, there's a couple of things I found that are really helpful. First of all is the practice mode. So if you go into practice mode here, this is a good way to kind of get locked into your brain some reference points, because decibels are relative. So in order to really get good at guessing decibels, you have to get good at comparing the differences in levels against things that you know. So if I just start with this practice, so I've got it set at 0 here. And what you want to do is I want to get in my head an idea of really 3 or 4 different reference points. One is 3 dB, the other is 6 dB, and then 10 dB would be like the ones that I really want to make sure I get. Of course, 0 dB, that would be no change. And then something around minus 15 dB would be nice to know. So let me start by if I take this up to 0, let's hear what 3 dB sounds like. Okay, so there's minus 3. There's 0. Switch to a different sample here. Those are my options. Okay. So there's minus 3. There's 0. So the thing you notice about minus 3 is minus 3 is not as much as you think it is. In fact, a 3 dB change is probably the smallest amount of dB difference that you could make where an average person that has not done any ear training would recognize. So anything less than 3 dB difference, and most people would not be entirely confident that anything changed. You know, maybe slightly, but they couldn't really say for sure. So that's the first thing. The first difference you want to lock into your brain is that sound of 3 dB difference, which is, you know, that level that, you know, like, you know, your friends and your parents and things, they're the one that they would barely think you changed anything. So if someone said turn up the TV, you would have to turn it up by at least 3 dB for anybody to think you did anything. Okay, much less than 3 dB, and most people are not going to think you did it. So let's listen to that again. There's 0. There's minus 3. 0, minus 3. So the next one I want to do is minus 6. So here's 0. There's minus 6. So if 3 dB is the difference that, you know, you would have to, the minimum you would have to make for your average person to think you did anything, 6 dB is sort of like the point at which everybody ought to feel like you really did something there, right? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good change. Like, I can definitely hear a difference. Even people who weren't entirely paying attention, 6 dB, yeah, I could hear that. So let's listen to that again. 0, minus 6. 0, minus 6. Okay, so the next one I want to listen to is minus 10. So here's 0, minus 10. So minus 10, to me, and if you read some of the books out there, they'll say that minus 10 dB or a plus 10 dB or just any sort of 10 dB change is kind of the amount that most average people would sort of describe as twice as loud, right? So it kind of got about twice as loud, okay? Now, of course, we know that twice as loud actually is a very different thing than twice as loud in dB. Twice as many dB isn't necessarily twice as loud. But generally speaking, most people would feel like a 10 dB change, like, okay, you got it got twice as loud. Let's listen to that again. 0, minus 10. 0, minus 10. So that's one to kind of think about, is that kind of, okay, about twice as loud, that 10 dB difference thing. Then the last one would be kind of in this 15 dB range. So to me, 15 dB is sort of like what I would call the useful threshold. So, turning it down much more than 15 dB means it stops being useful, the sound, right? It's sort of like much more than that, and I'm not hearing it so much anymore. I'm not, anything more than 15 dB, and you may as well not have it in, right? If you're thinking about this in terms of like a mix, right? So let's listen to that again. 0, 15. Okay. So I would suggest that the first thing you want to do if you want to get good at dB keying is spend some time with that practice slider and just try to kind of memorize those different keyframes, that 3 dB, 6 dB, 10 dB, 15 dB. Get an idea of what those sound like. Because then when you're doing the drills, you're going to compare what you're hearing against some of these things you've remembered. Okay? Now the next thing is the keyboard shortcuts. Let's just review those because those are going to become really handy in this game in particular. So in dB keying, you're presented with two options, and you're trying to guess which one represents the difference in dB that you're hearing. And the key commands that are going to help you the most are the arrow keys, left and right. That allows you to toggle between the original sound and the attenuated sound. So you can hear that too. And then A and D lets you select between the two answers. So clicking A will let you choose the answer on the left. Clicking D will let you choose the answer on the right. The reason the key commands are really helpful for this game in particular is I find that your eyes can trick you with this game. And so if you're looking at the options in front of you, you can sometimes rely more on your eyes than your ears to figure out the answer, and that almost never works for me. So what I like to do is before the next option comes up, I close my eyes. And then I listen to it and I toggle using the arrow keys on and off, and I listen to the difference. And what I'm trying to do is before I even see what the options are, I'm trying to guess, okay, does this difference sound closer to 3 dB, 6 dB, 10 dB, or 15 dB? Which one does it sound the closest to? I don't have to know necessarily which one it is. I just want to know which one does it sound closest to? Which of those options that I've memorized does it sound closest to? And once I kind of make a decision on that, then I open my eyes and I look at the two options in front of me. And whichever option that's there is the closest to the one that is the closest to what I thought, that's the one I pick. So if I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, this sounds closest to 6 dB, like a minus 6 dB is what it sounds closest to. And then I look at my options, and one of my options is minus 5 dB, and another is minus 8 dB. I'm going to pick the minus 5, because that is the option that is closest to the keyframe that I kind of thought it was in the neighborhood of. And I find I get much more consistent results that way. So let's try it, shall we? I'm going to launch this thing up and see what happens. I'm going to close my eyes. Well, actually, it'll come up first. So I'm going to hit the start button, and then I'm going to close my eyes. Okay, and I'm going to toggle back and forth. Okay, so it's getting quieter. It's way more than 3 dB, way more than 6 dB. It's more than 10 dB. So I'm going to guess it's closest to minus 15. So I'm going to open my eyes. And my options are minus 4 or minus 16. Okay? I'm going to click minus 16. And I'm right. Okay, now close my eyes before it comes up again. I'm going to toggle back and forth. Okay, it's getting a little bit louder when I toggle it on. So it's, of my keyframes I know, it's probably closest to 3 dB, plus 3 dB. Okay, so my options are 1.5 or 6. I'm going to guess 1.5, because that was the closest to the keyframe I thought. Okay, listening to this one. So it's getting quieter when I toggle it. I think it's closest to a 6 dB, like a minus 6 dB difference. Okay, so my options are minus 1 or minus 4. I'm going to pick minus 4 because I was thinking it was close to minus 6. All right, it's getting louder. I think it's closest to a 10 dB. I feel like it's a little bit more than 6. So I think it's closest to 10. Open my eyes. Okay, my options are 1.5 or 5.5. I'm going to guess 5.5 because clearly I was way off. It's definitely not 1.5 though. There we go. So it might be getting just ever so slightly louder, but it's really hard to tell. I'm going to guess it's closest to 0, closer to 0 than 3. Okay, my options are minus 2 and 0.5. I'm going to guess 0.5. There we go, got it. Okay. So it's getting quieter. It sounds closest to a minus 3 to me. Possibly a 6, but I don't feel like it's quite 6. So I'm going to say minus 3. Okay, so my options are minus 2.5 and 7.5. I'm going to guess the minus 2. Got it. Right, here we go again. That's more than a 3 dB. It's getting quieter by more than 3 dB. That's more than 6 too. I'm going to guess it's probably closest to 10. Okay, open my eyes. My options are minus 5 or minus 11. I'm going to guess 11. I got it. Okay. Okay, it's getting louder. It's more than a 3 dB difference. I can't decide if it's closer to 6 or 10. I'm going to err on the side of 10. Okay, I'm way off, right? But it's certainly not a 2, so I'm going to guess 5. Whoa, it's getting a lot quieter. So definitely it's closest to minus 15 of the keyframes I know, but I think it's even more than minus 15. Open my eyes. Okay, my options are minus 12 or minus 13. I decided it was definitely more than minus 15, so I'm going to guess minus 23. There we go. So it's getting louder when I toggle. I think it's closest to 3. It doesn't feel like quite 6 to me. Maybe a little bit more than 3. Okay, my options are 3.5 or 1.5. 3.5 has got to be the one then. Almost there, 2 more to go. Okay, it's more than 3. Feels closest to 10 to me, actually. So my options are -9 and -16. So my question here that I have to ask myself is, I guess closest to 10, and my options are slightly less than 10 or closer to 15. I actually think it's probably the 16. Now that I look at it. I might be wrong, but here I'm going to try it. Ah, I should have gone with my gut on that one. Okay. Here we go. Okay, this is closest to 3, I think. Okay, I've got 4 and 2 as my options. I think it's 2. It doesn't feel like it's more than 3 to me. I got it, okay. Here we go. It's getting ever so slightly quieter. So I'm getting as closest to -3. My options are -2 or 4.5. I'm going to go with the -2.5. All right, last one. See if I get it. It's getting quieter. Certainly by more than 3. I'm going to guess closest to 6. So my options are -11 and 6.5. I'm going to guess the 6.5. Yay! I cleared the level. Okay, so let me stop my screen share here and we can get back to all of you. So I think that's my strategy. That's how I play this game, is I play it with my eyes closed. Okay? Listen to the difference using the key commands to toggle. Guess which thing it's closest to that you remember. Open your eyes, pick the one that you're closest to. Notice the only one I got wrong was the one where I broke my rule. Right? I opened my eyes and I looked at it and I second guessed myself. Right? That was the only one I got wrong. So now, of course, as you get higher in the levels on this game, the differences you're guessing between get narrower and narrower, right? So this is level 1, and I mean, some of the options were like massive differences between them. But as I got further, even in that drill, they got closer and closer together. So those closer together ones get more and more often as you get higher up in the game. But hopefully by then, after you've gone through several levels, you're starting to get more of those kinds of keyframes locked in your mind. But I would recommend, every 3rd or 4th time you play the game, open up that practice mode and just refresh yourself with that slider. Let me remember what 3 dB sounds like. Let me remember what 6 dB sounds like, just to kind of remind yourself of those keyframes. So that's it. Any questions? All right. Well, there's hopefully some tactics. I did record this for those who couldn't join to watch it later, and I will put this on the YouTube page as well. So, all right, I'll see you next week. Any requests for next week? Which one we should demo next week?
Will you do the new game?
The Compressionist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely do that one. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll do that one next week. Good idea.
Cool. Thanks.
We'll plan on it.
Hey, Jason. Can you just write it down? Which game are you going to do for each week that we will know? Like.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it would be helpful for all of you to tell me which ones you think would be the most helpful. So if you want to send me an email or a comment of like, hey, make sure you do this one, make sure you do this one. That way I don't waste time on one that, no one cares about. So, but yeah, I can definitely do compressionist next week. And then I'll add that to the schedule of which ones I'm doing.
It also might be interesting if you did them sometime from your account where we would see them at a higher level, because I think many of us are, well, at least the people who are tuned in right now are
Right.
up there in the levels. And so
Yeah.
going back to the ones on level 1, like
Mike's
the
about it.
strategies may
Yeah.
be very similar, but
Yeah, so I've debated that a lot in my mind because some of these ones I'm at a level where I'm honestly hardly ever passing it.
Yeah.
I'm to that point where I'm failing more often than I'm succeeding at these
Yeah.
games, and so
you don't have to record those ones. You can just do them live.
So yeah, the question is like, okay, is that a useful demo for you to watch me totally bomb, or is it a useful demo for you to watch me succeed? I don't know. I mean, my ego's not in this thing, so I don't mind showing you me bombing, one after another.
Me too,
But is that helpful? I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, we could definitely, like, if you want to see what level 25 looks like on one of these games, or what level 30 looks like on Dr. Compressor, you can see what you have in store.
Do you feel like your strategy changes at all from level 1 to level 25? I mean, like, you even for this game, right? Like, are there more frequencies that you're trying to like pay attention to at the start, and are there different tactics that you?
I have not evolved my strategy for DB King much at all, even though you get to the higher levels. The only one I really have evolved a little bit on is the distortion game.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to the really higher levels of that, the things that you're listening for are different from the things you're listening for in the early forms of the game. It's almost like, it's more like you're listening for compression than distortion, because the distortion is so subtle that really it sounds more like compression. So, but yeah, mostly it's just the same,
By the way, Jason, actually through this Zoom, we can't hear it really well, but for DB King, it's fine. But I don't know if other like frequency or like compression thing, will that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's obviously some data compression going on, but I'm also using a little app to try to capture that audio, and I tried to reduce the browser signal so that you could hear my voice over it. So maybe I overdid that.
I think probably by virtue of it, the recording will probably sound a little better. I don't know if that's true, but
we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, because I reduced the fader a little bit on the browser in the little mixer app I'm using, just so that you could hear me talking, but maybe I overdid that. So I'll try that next time. I'll boost the level of the browser back up so you can hear it better.
What app are you using?
I'll show you. It's called Loopback.
It seems like this is becoming more and more prevalent in our lives, so it seems useful to know.
So this is it. It's called Loopback. So what Loopback does is it creates virtual audio devices on your computer, and you can tell it which apps it wants to capture audio from. So like I have two different ones. So the one you're listening to right now is the class one. And that is feeding my microphone, and then these two browsers and AutoCAD all into the same thing. And then I've got a separate one for my screen capture app, which is also capturing the sound of Zoom, so we can hear your voices in the I Show You. So you can see that what I've done, this is the one you're listening to, you can see that on Chrome and Safari I've reduced by what they're calling 90%. I don't know how many dB that actually is, or that's 90% of the slider. I don't think that necessarily means 90% of the sound. So I may have just overshot it a little bit. So yeah, I'll try to bring that up. I'll take it all the way up to 100 for next time. And if it's like, then we couldn't hear you talking at all, then I'll split the difference. So yeah, it's called Loopback, super helpful. This is what used to be called Soundflower. If you were familiar with Soundflower, it used to be a free thing that came out of Cycling 74 that people did Macs. And then it became kind of its own thing. And eventually this company Rogue Amoeba bought it out and basically took the technology and made it into this much bigger app that does all these other things. So, all right. Any other questions? All right, well, there's your SoundGym demo for the week. Those of you that are going to watch the recording, hopefully this was helpful, and those of you that are here, glad you were here. All right, I will see you all later.